Super excited to be joined by the voice of Boston College football. Also does some work at ESPN calling games as well. Jon Meterparel. Jon, thanks so much for taking the time today.
My pleasure. Good to have you guys.
So, Jon, typically, first or second week of January now, that's usually the thick of college basketball. But now with this new college football playoffs, we still got some playoff games coming around. How have you enjoyed this new expanded format of college football playoffs?
I've loved it. I think it's great. I think it's great for the sport. Not that college football really needed that much help because it's the second most popular sport in the country. But I think it's just been riveting, especially the Notre Dame game last night. I thought that was outstanding entertainment. So many different subplots to each game. I know some have been blowouts, but that happens in the NFL playoffs too. People tend to forget that. So you're going to get blowouts no matter what playoff you have. I admit the seeding could probably use some work. I think they'll tinker with that in the offseason and figure out what to do there to make things a little bit better on that front. But overall, AJ, I think it's been outstanding for the sport. It wouldn't surprise me to see them expand to 16 eventually, maybe in the next couple of years. We just saw from the bowl perspective, and I know Syracuse had a great bowl against a win in the Holiday Bowl, so that was huge for them. But the ratings have been great on ESPN, and I think the highest they've been in at least a decade. So people are watching football no matter what day it's on. So the more, the better.
Hey John, I'm a Boston guy. I know you're a big Boston guy. So when I heard the news that Bill Belichick would come into college football and join the ACC, I was a little shocked. I wasn't sure if he would stay. There were some reports of him maybe even taking the NFL head coaching job. How do you think Bill Belichick changes the landscape of college football? Bill O'Brien's relationship with him. Do you think it's going to be more normal for the college football NFL pipeline to be kind of interchanging now?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Griffin. I think that could happen. I think you're already hearing some rumblings about maybe the Cowboys have an interest in Ryan Day. I'm not sure that's going to happen this year, but down the road, I can see a lot of guys going. There'll be the reverse where college coaches go to the NFL, especially younger coaches, because the NFL is trending. Despite, Belichick obviously was the oldest coach in the league last year. It's not many 70-year-old coaches anymore. So I think you might have a swap in that regard. Younger coaches might go to the NFL, and you might see older coaches go to college. So, that was maybe just a one-off on that front. I mean, you're not going to see Andy Reid go to, I don't know, you picked a school, Penn State. That's not going to happen. I think it was the perfect storm for Belichick. He wasn't getting any interest or very little interest from the NFL. He still wanted to coach. It's in his DNA. So he said, hey, you know what? Why not go back to college? I'm a teacher at heart. And why don't I give this thing a shot? And oh, by the way, if they're going to pay me $8 million, I'll take that as well. So it's a fascinating subplot, especially as you guys know with Syracuse and the ACC, now with Belichick in the conference. That makes things better on that front from a PR standpoint, from a league that's been a bit down here in the last couple of years. So I think the soap opera aspect to it is fascinating.
Yeah, you kind of walked into my next question for you. It has to do with the ACC. Of course, everyone's kind of in college football, it's SEC, Big Ten. When you look at college basketball, especially this season, ACC right now only has one team in the top 25. With net rankings, they only have, I think, three teams in the top 40s. Are you concerned with the level of competition you see in the ACC from a basketball standpoint?
Not about concerned. I think it's those of us who have been in the league a while now, from a media perspective, it's been a swing of a pendulum, so to speak. I think it's cyclical, guys. You probably hear that word a lot. You hear that word a lot in the NFL and the NBA, for that matter. It's tough to sustain a dynasty, which is, Danny Hurley. If they win three in a row, that's officially a dynasty. You can call them that now in UConn if you like. I doubt they're going to win three in a row. If they do, good for them. But I think the league would like to be stronger, no doubt about that. Horrible SEC ACC challenge. That was not a good look for the league. The net rankings, you're right, AJ, have been way down. So come tournament time, Joe Lenardi, I think, only has four teams in the tournament right now, and it's only January 9th. But, it's still early in that regard. I still think the ACC, whether they're top heavy or what, I mean, last year you saw NC State make a miraculous run. You guys are familiar with Syracuse making deep tournament runs when people don't expect them to do anything. Obviously, they'll be struggling to make a tournament this year, but I think just the early nature of college basketball. Things are going to turn here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to see everything kind of maybe get sorted out from an ACC standpoint, with maybe some teams making better, consistent runs throughout the year. Obviously, Duke's the best team. They might be the first Duke team in 25 years to go undefeated in the conference. That would certainly be a big lightning rod for the league. But you also don't want just 3 or 4 teams in the tournament. So to answer your question the long way, I think the cycle for the ACC right now is on a downward turn, but that can turn on a dime come March 15th.
And some of the things that keep the ACC in the spotlight are the big names. And for BC, it's been up and down the past couple of years. But Quentin Post was one of those big names for BC. He was 7 foot, could really do it all, now doing good things with the Warriors G League. How does BC aim to, how can they try to replace him? And what has been the goal this season in terms of replacing his great output?
Well, it's difficult. You only lost Post. You also lost 4 other players around him, including Jaden Zachary, who's making a nice impact with Clemson. Devin McLaughlin is playing very well at Vanderbilt. Claudio Harris is playing very well at Mississippi State. So that's a tough ask at a place like BC right now that's just trying to build some form of consistency. And it's been a struggle, guys, for 16 years. It's been a tough fit for some reason. A lot of times, you can question a lot of decisions from a standpoint of, whether it's personnel, whether it's coaching, whether it's resources, whatever you want to make of it. They've had a really down cycle, so they're trying for any form of, right now Earl Grant, I think this year was searching. He knew he needed an inside presence. Chad Venning's been a good addition from St. Bonaventure. A guy that maybe some of your upstate New York fans are familiar with. He was second team All Atlantic 10 last year. He's been a tough cover for some teams. But the problem with BC, and I think a lot of teams in the league right now, it's been a backcourt issue. Backcourts, this just in, backcourts are essential to success, especially in college basketball. If you don't have a true point guard and a couple guys that can shoot, you got problems. So BC's searching for an identity. You hear that word thrown around a lot. That identity is still being crystallized at BC. This is an important game on Saturday for not only Syracuse, but for BC. This is a game where both teams think they can win it and both teams need it. And just from a confidence standpoint, especially in the ACC, I know it's early, but both teams need this game, I think, just from a confidence standpoint to move forward.
I think it's funny, the answer you just gave, you could have gave the exact same answer for Syracuse this season. Doesn't really have a ball handler. JJ Starling's been that guy, but then he got hurt. Don't have great shooters. When I look at that BC roster, a player that did kind of stand out for me when I watched a few highlights was Donald Hand Jr. I think he's looked really well. What in the games you've seen him, how have you liked his performances?
Yeah, no, he's been terrific. He's definitely emerged as a scorer. He had an ACL last year. He's coming back from that injury. He's definitely got his lift back. He's a player that can be an athletic presence. He's definitely can take over a game. He's got, to borrow Bill Raftery term, good spurt ability. And he's an dynamic element that BC hasn't had. They've had a few of those the last couple of years, but Hand's carrying on that tradition. But there's only so much he can do, especially because he's still kind of learning what they're trying to do around him. So you need a point guard. I saw a couple weeks ago we did a game on the ACC network, BC Miami. Miami's clearly struggling, but a guy named Luka Tays for BC emerged a little bit at point guard. He's a freshman from Tokyo, and his cousin's Jonathan Tays, former Blackhawks star. But he's a guy they hope can be a true point guard. Shooting not there yet for him. Chaz Kelly has been a disappointment. So outside of Hand in that backcourt, AJ, again, it's a searching job. So they really need someone, whether it's Tays, whether it's Kelly, whether it's someone else, to emerge.
I mean, being from Massachusetts, there was a lot of talk about Luca and him staying home for BC. I only live a town over from where he grew up, and he played on the Middlesex Magic, one of the most popular AAU teams in the Boston area, with a couple other Syracuse, well, former recruits that they didn't actually pan out getting, like JP Estrella, who's now with Tennessee, and then Ryan Mila down in Providence, who's doing well for the Friars. But sticking with Hand, he's averaging the most assists on the team for BC. And that goes back to your point about Chad Venning, just trying to get his groove with BC after coming over from St. Bonnie. He's averaging about 5 rebounds. Why do you think that hand is getting more rebounds than Venning? And if it's just the style of play of the Eagles, or if it's just a hand just being aggressive?
No, I think it's a little bit of both. Their style of play, they're never going to be. You had Post last year. You capitalized on that. He was a 7-footer. Obviously, he's going to get his share of rebounds. And Benning should have more than 5 to build on your point. I think that number will increase here, probably in league play. But I think they're 4 out, 1 in. They're Elijah Strong is a good rebounder. Another guy who's kind of getting his groove a little bit. A guy that's a project, if you will, but he has shown flashes for Earl Grant. So I think Venning throughout the league probably will average more 6, 7. Hand to his credit has been aggressive, and that's one thing I noticed watching the Miami game is that he really follows his shot. He has a good knack. He has a good court sense. You could tell he's been well coached. He's got a great tree. His father was a terrific player at the University of Virginia in the late '90s, so he's learned well. But they definitely do need more. The rebounding's been okay, and the numbers aren't bad, but they could use more of a presence from Venning on both ends of the floor.
So JJ Starling will certainly be the focal point for Syracuse come Saturday. He's coming off a big 21-point performance against Georgia Tech. In terms of a defensive standpoint, from what you've seen from the Eagles, can they cope with a player who is a dynamic scorer like JJ Starling is?
Yeah, no, I think they can. It's just a matter of a commitment. We've seen it wane. Their defense has gotten better, and that's to Grant and his staff's testament. A couple of years ago, they couldn't stop a cold, but now they're much better. And when they're better when they're swarming, they tend to, whether it's a matchup zone or whether it's a man to man or whether they switch a lot. To me, they're better when they're more active on that side of the ball. Their shot blocking's up, the numbers up. I think they're averaging about 5 per game. That's a good number for them. They're not going to be, not going to be a throwback to the Georgetown years in the '80s with Patrick Ewing. Not many teams are, but I think when they're effective, AJ, they are a swarming defense. That's what they're going to have to do tomorrow against Starling. Can't let him get going. I know that every team's probably concerned about that. He's the number 1 guy on your scouting report. So if you can slow him down, that would be to BC's benefit.
Besides slowing Starling down, are there any other keys for BC that you would like to see them to get off to a good start and try to win this game?
I think it's just about establishing better starts. To the team's credit, when they've come back to win this year, for instance, I keep coming back to the Miami game, but that's my most recent game with BC. They overcame a 19-point deficit, guys, and that was the largest home deficit they've ever come back to win from. And I know Miami's down this year, and we were all looking at each other. Wait a minute, they're down 28-9. How did this happen? So you can't do that. I mean, you can't. Even though Syracuse is 500 team, that's hard to live and die by. You can't rely upon comebacks. So BC needs to get off to a better start, offensively, defensively. I think there's going to be some energy in the building. A lot of the Syracuse fans will be there, but that's okay. If it's a sellout, you should still build off that energy. And they're accustomed to that anyway. A lot of these guys have played in those type of environments, even at home, when there's a lot of opposing fans. So use that to your advantage. It's a 3 o'clock start. You're not looking at a noon start like the Miami game was. Sometimes that's a factor. So both teams clearly, I think, will be energized, but BC needs consistency from the outside shooting aspect. It's been okay. Clearly that's where a lot of teams win in college basketball. It's a 3-point game. We all know that. Hit those open shots. I think there'll be a few, with Syracuse's defensive structure, and make sure that you're committed. Give yourself that rugged defensive commitment early to give yourself a chance to win.
Awesome. Well, John, we really appreciate you taking the time and have fun with the rest of your college basketball season.
My pleasure, guys. Happy to be on with you. Good luck to you.